order the regularly scheduled board meeting for USD 464 for Monday, March 13th. I'd like to welcome all our visitors that are here at tonight's meeting. We have a lot of items on the agenda, including a review of our budget, the THS project. I appreciate your patience and understanding as we work through the agenda. For those who are speaking, presenting to the board, lowering or removing your mask will be allowed to aid in communication. Otherwise, please follow the district mask policy and lead the way for our students. Anyone not following these rules or being disrespectful or disruptive will be asked to leave the room. As tonight we have a couple officers from the Tonganoxie Police Department here to help us out. At this time, we're going to stand for the flag salute, but first, I would ask that we take a few moments to remember the events of September 11, 2001, and how that brought the country together. A moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We got some lighting back here.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one more time that all those that are here, please put on your mask. If you will not follow the rules, you will be asked to leave the meeting. We got one in the back over here.
It's not a law
Private property, sir.
that we pay for with our taxes.
You were asked, do you know exactly what the expectations are?
You've been warned, sir.
Okay.
At this time, the meeting is going to be in recess, and for those who cooperate, either put on your mask or leave the room.
I'm going to have to ask you, please. Please, otherwise the police are going to have to. I mean, he asked.
I think this is for now. Don't you agree?
No.
So unnecessary. There's no law, there's no city.
I mean, I'm not going to, if they can't cooperate, please ask them, I'm asking you to escort them out of the meeting.
But can I say,
Thank you.
something?
Not violating any policy or anything under city mandates. There's no city ordinance at all stating.
Can I say something?
No, for now.
Charge anybody for coming into any building under no mandate.
What? You said you had some good work by the way.
Ma'am, you have to be wearing a mask to be here.
You guys know.
Yes, ma'am, they're at the front door coming in. You have to have a mask on to be at the meeting.
They're going to play these games.
I understand that, sir. If you please step, the little one no, but the young lady here has to have a mask as well. Okay, thank you.
We're not going to start the meeting until people.
No, I know, that's fine, but I was just gonna say,
The gentleman's going to get some masks for himself and the young lady.
like, we are all
Or the lady
open-minded,
is-
what they're hearing. So it's important that they're here sharing their opinion, but they have to follow shoes.
Yes.
But we want them to, I mean, it's good, you know? I mean, I'm just gonna say that so that it's not that we don't want to hear from them, we just,
I agree.
Can I just ask, it's nothing bad.
it's such a small room.
This is our standard meeting room, and it's where we have the facilities that can broadcast the meeting.
I was just, I mean, honestly,
It's like,
We'll have a new main room and a new school.
well, the new high school.
yeah, this is on YouTube.
Well, I just figured there's a huge gymnasium where you can spread people out more, so it was just curiosity. I mean, I asked that a few years ago, not just this year, it's just.
It's a good question. We're gonna do better when we move into our new facility.
Are we allowed in the meeting or not?
With the mask on.
He's a physician. I hope he talks. Intelligent, knows everything.
I'm not going to resume the meeting until people follow the rules. I mean, and
I would be expecting you to do your job.
No, sit wherever. I'm trying to make sure you guys.
ma'am, please ask if you return your mask. We'll call the meeting back into session. Thank you for your cooperation. And just another reminder that disruption and disorderly behavior are not going to be tolerated during this meeting. At this time, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimously. At this point in time, we're required by new legislation to approve the revenue neutral resolution. I don't know if everyone saw, it was attached this afternoon to our packet. I guess I would move that we approve resolution number 1 regarding the revenue neutral rate resolution that was included in the packet. Is there a second or any discussion? Been moved and seconded by me, seconded by Justin. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is approval of the 2021-2022 budget that was published. Is there any discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2021-2022 budget.
I make a motion to approve the 2021-22 budget.
Is there a second?
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. All right, with that brings us into presentations. First up, transportation. Jill?
Good evening. Thanks for letting me come tonight and talk to you a little bit about transportation. Thanks for all you do for our district, and thanks for continuing to update our fleet. I do have a new list for you, if you would like that. That includes our new buses that we have, bus 50 and bus 80 are 2 newest buses, so those are added on there. I have striked through some of them that we've gotten rid of, just kind of for your visual to know. Also, I've added bus number 15, which is a small bus that we are leasing right now, and it has the capability of transporting 2 students in wheelchairs, and so that has been a much needed item, and so thank you for letting us get that. We are looking to lease a new one. However, the production of small buses has come to a standstill due to the parts and all of that. So I'm staying close in contact with our dealer, and he's hoping to have a bid next board meeting for you all. So hopefully that will be in the near future. I also wanted to let you know I'm really using the software that you approved for us to purchase last year, it's called Traversa. It's coming, I love it. It helps in routing. So for instance, this year we had a driver who was sick early in the year, didn't have time really to get our directions going. So I just said, hey, can you send me a list of your stops in order, student name and address? I took it to the software, plugged it in there, it printed out turn-by-turn directions for me to do the route. So it's been great. We also use it for trips. We can do the same thing. We're leaving from Tonganoxie High School, we're going to Paola and back. We can just plug that in there. It gives turn-by-turn directions for the drivers. So I love it. It also just helps keep everybody updated on all the certifications. So we just put all that information in. It'll pop up on the screen and say you have a driver due for a certification at the end of the month. And so it has a lot of uses, and it's thank you for that. It's helped a lot. As everyone is across the country, we're short on drivers. I'm sure that's not news to you. But we're making it work. I'm really appreciating the athletic directors and the coaches who are being flexible and working with us, and as well as my drivers who are just, we're getting it done, and we're getting people where they need to be. And so thanks for everyone who's here that has a part in that. That's pretty much all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Questions for Jill?
Yeah, I know it was probably a couple years ago, we're talking about just the capacity, like how full the buses are. I mean, how does that look right now with where everything's at with what you have in your fleet?
Well, some of our buses are pretty full, you know, those ones that go through the housing areas in town, and we've had to combine some routes and split some routes up due to the driver shortage. So, but we have enough space. You know, we're making it work. But those 77 passengers, we like those.
How many drivers are you short currently? 4 drivers. And how many total would you like to have? I mean,
I'd love to have 6.
Well, I mean, as far as total number of drivers, I'm just trying to understand that's a percentage.
How many do we have currently?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you would ask me that.
Sorry.
Let's see, 17, minus dollars, 13, 14. Yeah, we're at 1, 5. I have about 18 drivers.
Okay.
CDL drivers. I have van drivers as well, but CDL.
Any other questions for Jill?
Let's do math.
Does that software do optimal routes and stuff as far as like, hey, here's all the stops we have to make, here's the order in which you should make them?
It doesn't necessarily do that. However, it puts it up on a map. So you can clearly see, like if you've got stop number 5 and then stop number 17 is after it, you can clearly see, and it's super easy. You just go over to the number and you just easily click on it and move it where it needs to be.
Is that all, Drew?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Before Barb comes, I'm gonna ask one more time, please follow the mask ordinance, ma'am. I mean, in the background, the black short shirt. I mean, and you know, I don't like wearing this any more than anyone else, but if you can't follow the rules, you can watch from remotely.
Honestly, sir, I'm just nervous about.
Meeting's in recess. Mister, can you please escort this woman from the premises? Stop this.
We're going to go back and stay here. I don't encourage you.
If she wants, if she signed up to speak, she can speak without her mask on if she wants to come back in.
Okay, sir, I have PTSD from being raped as a child, and this is.
The meeting's in
I
recess.
appreciate your comments, though, that we're complaining about masks when you're not even thinking about the emotional, the shock this can cause people. That's not okay to me.
If you don't like it, you can
Yeah,
watch it remotely.
my right to be able to speak. Laughing at her?
We're not students at lunch. You guys
And do you like to join them? I mean, honestly.
Are you running me in, Billy? There you go. I need to press.
Sir, could you get his information? He's back in the corner. I mean, we're not, this is a public meeting. Public participation is not a
If
right.
you done this 3 weeks ago when you pulled your son, we wouldn't be having this. But you didn't want to do your job then.
You got more to say?
We got somebody showing.
Where are we at?
Well, I guess is he gonna cooperate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And she's wearing a mask. We'll resume the meeting. Mrs. Smith, with your update on the student nutrition.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here to tell you that student nutrition is, I just put this on your table because I want you to know that the student nutrition staff is doing everything they can together with everyone we have. We're achieving, and we're doing more than we've ever had before here in Tonganoxie. The student nutrition department needs to be, well, I congratulate them, my staff, because they have really pulled together. We have got people moving from different schools, covering different spots, and I'm just very proud of the attitude and the teamwork that our team is doing. You know, even though it's frustrating with all of COVID stuff, our team is coming together and has been together, and I'm very grateful for that. And so I want to focus, hopefully, on that. So I'm here to congratulate my team because they are working so hard, as many people are working hard and doing more. So I just wanted to share with you that we're hanging in there through all the trials that we're facing and trying to get through it every single day, and each new day presents challenges and good times with our staff. And they even got together last Friday night to just get together and outside of work to enjoy each other's company because we need it, because it's just such a tight time during those hours when we're feeding the kids. And I really appreciated them enjoying themselves, and they want to do it once a month if we can. So that's really what I'm focusing on. Any questions?
Have you had any trouble getting supplies that I saw in the news with some districts were?
Yes. I'm working very diligently with my distributor, and I'm on the phone or emails and texts and messages with her almost daily, and sometimes tons of multiple times. We are having to change menu items on a dime, on whatever's in. She sends me letters almost daily about price increases, products that are no longer going to be available that we had before. And so we're just making it work the best we can and making sure that we're still staying as compliant as we can, and I'm documenting everything so we get looked at, we can show them that we're doing what we can in this time period. You're welcome.
Staff getting excited for the new kitchen at the high school.
Yes, and it couldn't come at a better time. we have equipment that seems to know it's getting close. So we're very excited and very grateful, and I think we're ready for one school, keep all of our staff together. Having two different outlets has been challenging, but we're still doing it.
Any additional questions? Thanks for keeping everybody fed.
Well, thank you for letting us be in school. I know the ladies talk to me all the time about how they're so glad to see the kids every day. That means a lot to them.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, team.
First of all, I'd like to thank Barb and Jill and Mitch Loomis for all they're doing for our school. I know Barb has been up here often working, and Mitch and Jill, and we just appreciate the communication between their departments and our buildings and the other buildings to make sure we get kids to school, we're feeding kids, and doing all the maintenance things. And we're shorthanded, we all know that, but they're doing a great job. And as far as all the staff and the parents for their continued flexibility during these challenging times. Before I start my presentation, I'll just tell you what I tell every parent that calls me. And what do we want from elementary school in Tonganoxie is from 7:55 to 3:10 to the very best part of their day. And our number one job is supervising and keeping them safe. And I want you to think about that when we go through our presentation. So can you go to the next slide, of course? This is just an update. Over the past 3 years, some of the things that we've done at Tonganoxie Elementary School includes we added a 4-year-old at-risk preschool program, and we have 2 early childhood classrooms that are full capacity, both morning and afternoon. We've restructured our intervention time so we can serve all students, and it's worked out really well. The staff has done a great job of collaborating. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when Mrs. Blazo talks about our reading program and our ESP intervention programs. We created a PLC. PLC is a professional learning community, and our grade level teams meet once a week professionally, and we've redesigned how that's looking so we can focus on just looking at data. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, and how we're using our special education teachers and our Title I teachers. And we've maximized our schedule over the past 3 years, which is included when we first got here. We added some recess time our second year because we thought it was very important that the kids get more time out, because you have to have a healthy body and a healthy mind. And what it's done is create a little bit of a crunch within the day, but it's really helped out with the kids getting out a little more. Most of you get our monthly newsletter, which we made it a priority to make sure we recognize our students' success and our staff success. And then we get articles from all areas of the building showing what's going on in the building. Real proud of that. And one of the most important things is our parent-teacher committee. We've been partnering with them for the last 3 years. And we have some important events coming up. This October, we're going to continue with our Moms and Muffins program for all our first graders. We did it 2 years ago and went successful. And again, we'll do our Dads and Donuts in November. The PTC has been a great support for this school. We really appreciate all the parents and everything during the fundraising. And finally, the last thing, and probably one of the most important things as we get into every year, and it's even more important now with the challenges we've had over the past 18 months with this pandemic, is making the social and emotional needs of our staff and students a regular part of the schedule. Part of that is we have our counselors in every classroom on a regular basis. We're implementing a program called Second Step. It's a really good program. All the teachers have access to it. And now with the addition of another half-time counselor, we're able to reach all those kids on a regular basis. So, you go to the next one. Another highlight is we have a call room. We took one of our unused classrooms, painted it into a real nice color, added a lot of manipulatives. We have a lot of kids that just have a lot of stressors, have a lot of sensory issues, and we needed a place for them to go instead of clearing out a classroom when they were having an episode. This is a safe place for students. The help of Annette Bradley, plus Blazo and Shelby Burnett, who's our school social worker. We got this room all completed this summer. We were able to use some ESSER funds. It's a great room. Me and the board members, anytime we you have a chance, if you want to come down and see it, it's been a real help, so we don't have to clear out a classroom, take 20 kids out because one kid's having a bad day. Our BLT meetings have been great. We've restructured that. Today we had one. We have it scheduled on a regular basis, second Monday of every month, and need a second meeting. The BLT said, hey, if we need to meet again, should we do it? We've been focusing on positive discussions and trying to help all of our students with decisions, not getting into stuff that doesn't need to be discussed. Not in there. Like I said, this is my 4th year, and we had a first meeting in July, and everyone's been great. And finally, the last few things, we are going to have standard base grades cards, kindergarten through 5th grade. Our goal is to be implemented by 4th quarter. Some of you who have students that are already in kindergarten and 1st grade have already seen this type of cards, and we will be getting them for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th by the end of the year. All certified staff members are submitting SMART goals, and one of those goals, and it's part of their individual professional development plan, and one of those goals must focus on academic improvement, and we're just finishing those up as we get into our evaluation cycle. And then our 3 building goals. Number 1, and this is my goal every day when I come to school, is I want, through proper supervision of students, by following all procedures, we will ensure safety of staff and students on a daily basis. That's my number 1 job as principal. Number 2, and this is something that has kind of come down through the board too, use effective communication internally and externally by following the recommended lines of communications as presented during professional development. We talked about it at a board retreat, and we talked about it as a building, and it's worked out really well. I'm really proud of how our staff is communicating internally as well as with parents and outside the building. And then finally, to use data and structured PLCs to create ESP groups to work with all students on academic progress. Whether you're somebody on the top end or in the low end, our goal is to make sure you get the interventions to get the most that you can. And those are the 3 things we'll focus on this year in our building. Mr. Henry was going to be here, but he's out working on us. Earlier I talked about professional learning communities, and I've worked with them in several districts. And if you don't go back and re-look at the process, it's not going to be successful. And what we are focusing on now on Wednesdays are 4 things, and they're pretty simple. What do we want the students to learn and be able to do? Those are our standards. How will they know when they've learned it? Those are our assessments. The math tests we're taking this week, the state assessment, the predictive assessments. How will they respond when they do not learn it? That's where our intervention piece comes in some of our phonics programs that we've initiated the last 2 years, K-5. And how will they respond when they already know it? That's what we do with the kids that are already getting it. And if we focus on those 4 things, we feel like we can move more people to being successful. You want to go to the next one? And part of that, and this is a small, but Mr. Henry over the course of summer was reaching out to principals. Hey, how do you do your PLCs? How can it make it more useful? How can it be valuable? And so we came up with a form. We didn't reinvent the wheel, but every time our PLC meets, which is on Wednesdays, each grade level fills out a form, and they send it so it's shareable with everybody on their team and inside with the administration. If we have questions, we can go back and look. If we have kids we're talking about, we can go see what they're doing. It's a real simple form. It's very easy for the teachers to put in information, and it's out there and it'll be continually looked at. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Blazo, and she's going to talk about what we're doing with our reading instruction.
Okay, so this summer the reading committee met twice to go over some of the things that is coming down from KSDE and the mandate to move to a structured literacy program. And so what we really did this summer is we looked at what are we doing now compared to what is a structured literacy program and what can we do with the materials and resources that we have. So we really looked at all the different things that we currently use to see how they would fit into the structured literacy program and be effective to use at the same time. And then what resources do we need outside of that in order to have a successful reading program here at TDS. We are moving away from reading recovery. And as I mentioned, we met for 2 full days. The teams were great, very collaborative, worked together very well. We had a scavenger hunt in the building to find things that we didn't even know we had. So that was great to find some other resources that were very helpful in fitting into the new program that we're moving towards. We have also identified some areas of need, and so we've been able to purchase some new resources, including decodable books for our primary grade levels, accelerator reader for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and we've redesigned our core reading time to fall into line with the KSDE core reading time recommendations. The other interesting thing that we were just able to get as well, which will come up as far as our dyslexia screener, is the map for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. We are using that as well for map fluency to help identify those students. So that's another program that we have purchased in order to help our reading groups.
Okay. The key to success with our BSP, it's our Brave Support Program, period. You're trying to get rid of the MTSS, and by MTSS, we wanted to get something that was more specific to the buildings. And our BSP time is where we're using our data. That's how we determine our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 groups, and who needs to go where for interventions during that daily intervention time. And we've broken it up into 3 areas. We meet and focus on interventions in reading 2 days a week, and math 2 days a week, and 1 day a week we work on our social and emotional learning. The Tier 1 and Tier 2 students will be supported in the classrooms during BSP. Some of that's a walk too, because we might have to move some kids around in grade levels, because we also have our special education teachers and our title teachers providing that support during our BSP time. And then Tier 3 students, they will receive continued support outside the classroom with our title teachers and their interrelated special education teachers. Now, Ms. Blaze is going to talk a little bit about our data that we're using, how we're using it, just give you some examples, and talk about the map fluency screener, because we're identifying kids who are flagged for dyslexia and what our next stats. On this first information, we couldn't say it was the class of 2029 or something, because then people are like, well, that's my kid. But this is how we look at our data. It's kind of small, but I'm having Ms. Blaze explain the 4 parts of the rubric and how it looks for us.
Yes, so when we originally started looking at this, we were just kind of looking at a grade level year over year, and then we kind of came together and realized, well, that's looking at a different group of students every year. So we need to find a way to look at it to where we're comparing apples to apples. So we looked at it comparing the same group of students over multiple years. And so this is the math state assessment, and what you can see is the blue percentages are students who are below grade level, red are approaching, yellow are on grade level, and green are above grade level. So that's how your state scores your 1, 2, 3, 4. And
Now,
so,
are those, because I have a question here, because VSB has 3 tiers.
Yes.
But the state, I think, has, they use the same terminology, I think it's tiers, right?
they still have 2, this is state assessments compared to MTSS. So what the tiers are with our intervention piece,
Okay,
and this is our state assessment.
This is the data.
right, but they categorize the blue, red, yellow, green as tier 1.
No.
tier-
No, not as
Not
state assessment.
necessarily.
Just with MTSS, when you're talking about intervention specifically, that is your tier 1, your tier 3.
Because I looked at the state report.
These are
cards.
levels.
Okay,
They're 2
those are
totally
levels,
different
okay.
things.
Yes, 2 totally different things.
So this is a comparison between what our state averages look like and what we look like. Normally, if you look at the red and the blue, those are going to be our tier 3 kids. They're the ones that have the higher needs.
Right.
Then the gold and the green will be our tier, well, red and gold could be our tier 2. Some of them may need to get tier 3, some of them may need to get tier 2 interventions. And usually the ones on the green, they're the ones that are going to be the high flyers, tier 1s. Some of the kids that may be on a gifted IEP that we got to give them extra to keep them going. So even though there's 4 areas that the state assessment, the scores in, they're divided up. When we look at the data, it's in 3 groups, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3.
All right.
Yeah.
So the first one was our math, our second one is our ELA, and you can see in ELA,
when you were comparing those, is one of them, you said the state and one of them is our,
They're both ours.
oh, they're both ours.
Yeah, they're
different
both ours,
years.
so it's year over year.
Okay.
With the same group of students. This is our ELA. What you want to see is the yellow and red go down, or sorry, the blue and the red go down and the yellow and green go up. So you can see in this one, the one on the left is the prior year. So our blue and red went down and our yellow and green went up, which is what we're looking for.
We want a majority of kids to be in the yellow and green. And if we don't look at the data and we don't use our interventions, that's probably not gonna happen on a regular basis. And this is just comparing one group of kids within our building from one year to the next to show that we've lowered the two categories we don't want students in and raised the two that we do want students in.
I mean, is this pattern consistent for all grades, or is this?
You know what, we looked at that too, and one of the things you run into, sometimes you have a class that's just dynamite, and then you have a class that just isn't. And we're just trying to figure out if there's any consistencies or inconsistencies with instruction. Either it's, when we look at teachers, maybe we're not doing right at grade levels, or is it just that class?
I mean, isn't the maths really focused on growth? I mean, to me, that's where you focus, is
For math testing.
Yeah,
math
math
testing.
testing.
Can that somehow be correlated into the tiers? Understand, hey, if this particular student, even if they're scoring lower, we want to make sure that they're hitting their goals or exceeding them, because there's that, it's all about the trend and the long-term growth, right?
And we have a slide.
We have a slide.
Yep, this is just our state testing results and information to look at year over year.
And that's just one part of the data. Usually we look at three things when we're talking about extra interventions. We're looking at classroom, because that's every day. We're going to look at state assessments. We're going to look at MAP scores. So those are going to be our 3 points of data to see where those kids are going.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there that I was actually made a note of, because the structured PLCs, you had those 4 questions, and it looked pretty reactive. It's like, oh, if we do the test, and then we figure out, okay, if they aren't scoring, what do we do? The one thing you mentioned was, the question I had was, is there another question, like, how can we get better, right? What things are is maybe a particular teacher doing that's working well, so that then it can be pushed out to others and not make it so reactionary?
On the other 4 days of the week, each of our teams plan, they team plan and they look at standards, and one of the expectation is that they're talking about kids, talking about instructional strategies, so they can share things. One of the things we haven't had over the last year is a chance to do vertical planning. Vertical planning is where we talk about reading K2-3 or K1-2 and 3-4-5 to kind of see how that plays, and it really put us back a little bit in that, but I understand exactly where you're coming from. Is how are we going to know what the best practice is? Well, through collaboration and through the evaluation process and just looking over data over a long period of time.
And the great thing about teachers too is we love to collaborate. And so, if something's not going well in one classroom, they will go to another teacher and say, hey, I was trying to teach this topic and I'm struggling. Do you have any great ideas to help the kids be more successful? So that goes on a daily basis, just in casual conversation between the teachers.
So I understand this. Is this one class? This is not school. This is just like one grade level.
One grade level, yes, year over year. Yeah, we just took out all identifying factors.
Right, and we're doing this with each grade level because we want to see where those growths are and where we really need to focus. And, I'm not making excuses, but last year was a tough challenge, and we didn't have those opportunities to do that collaboration. But we did, second semester, sit down and take a look at our intervention period, and we really had a strong finish. We had our MAP testing that went up, and then we used our summer school time to really focus on some of those kids. So it's going in the right direction. Are we where we need to be? No, but we know how we're going to get there. We're very confident that we're going to continue to make improvements.
Okay, so this is this kind of goes to your question about growth. So this is what we would get a report from MAP testing, which we're doing currently. Our MAP testing, our dyslexia screening, all of that is going on this week. And so I just pulled this out from last year's data where you can see we take the information and we rank it in red, yellow, green. Red are students who are going to be tier 3 intervention students, students who need that very intense support with maybe our title or our special education teachers. The yellow are going to be our tier 2 students, and those are going to be students who could get interventions in the classroom classroom, from the teacher, they could receive some extra support from our title teachers if they fit within a group of skills that are lacking. And our green are going to be our tier 1 kiddos, our students who are meeting all of their goals, all of their expectations, and they are right where they need to be. And so they are receiving that enrichment or that what their skills, if they have a certain skill that they're weak in, then that's where they would get their intervention.
So with the extra stuff, I mean, the big question I have is, do we have resource constraints? Because that's, people doing that, and there's a significant percentage, of students that are in that area where they need extra time, and there's somebody there that's, is that a challenge with us, or do you
Yes.
feel like?
Well, I'm a big recess guy, and I don't want to make it punitive to get a student more time. I don't want to take a recess away to get them extra help. We're counting on our teachers in the classroom, we're counting on pull-out time for BSP, and we're counting on our interventions during the day. We don't, and it's another thing on our list that I've talked with Mr. Feldkamp, and hopefully it'll come around, but we want to do more things after school if possible. It's just, we are so tight on our schedule, and we're so tight on on staff sometimes, it limits us. So we want to make sure that during that day, we get as intense as possible. Good question about the resources. I had this discussion with Forrest at least twice already at the beginning of the year. What resources are we using and is fiscally responsible? There's so many resources out there. We want to find the ones that
You have software resources, hard, material, but then it's people too.
Yes.
I mean, it's,
And we're short, just like the bus drivers, we're short staffed as well.
Excuse me, do we have the opportunity to ask a question?
Board has a question, they can have a question.
We've got a lot on the agenda. I guess I would kind of like him to get through his presentation and continue on. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
No, I would just say that this format doesn't allow for that. However, I would write down what you want to say, and if you email, you can email whoever you think is most appropriate, and someone will get back to you, because we want to hear questions and we want to give you feedback. But it's just that if we start, if you start opening at questions, then we might never get, right? Is that
If you guys have any questions, you can ask them now, or you can email me, I'd be happy to answer, we'd be happy to answer.
So might have a solution. Just to,
we're open to that too.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, I feel like our solution is a work in progress. We are addressing the data need, we're looking at our data. We're gonna talk a little bit about our phonics program, and we made a switch from a balanced literacy program to a structured literacy program, which is mandated by the state of Kansas. So our solution is, we just have to continue the path and follow those mandates, make best use of our resources, follow what we're doing in PLCs, focus on those 4 questions, and try to help every kid out. That's the solution. And I'm confident that our teachers are doing that.
Drew, what you were asking is about growth, and this chart shows their growth. It shows what their projected growth would be and what their observed growth is.
Okay.
And each teacher sits down and sets a goal sheet with each student after a map testing to identify where they need to go, and then they meet with them periodically throughout that time frame to make sure that they're working towards that goal. So we do look at that projected and observed growth to see where they are.
And you should get a sheet on, for example, when there's a bit, parents have to sign off and know that they know where they're at. Parents or teachers talk with their student, here's where we are scored, here's where we'd like to be, and we'll keep following that and see where we're at.
And yeah, a suggestion I would have, I know last year with the summer school, it would be to tie this in, early so that for communication on if your child's going to be in summer school and say, hey, these are the areas that, and these are the things that may qualify your student for the opportunity to do summer school, and here's where they're at now, and here's where we're trying to target them to be after summer school. And so that you get some, I know that last year it was a challenging year, but as far as just my own experience with having one of my children in it, as well as just some feedback I've gotten from some other parents. Because that would be then a really data-driven, exactly the why behind it.
And that's the plan, because we will map test 3 times this year. So we can't identify summer school students in August or September, but what we can do is say, well, here's our group, let's see how that group does when we test in January, and let's see how that group tests in May. And there may be some kids that weren't in there in September that are in there in May, and there will be some kids that were in September weren't in there in May.
Right.
And hopefully during our parent-teacher conferences, those are some of the things that our teachers are hoping to discuss with parents. Hey, here's what we're seeing right now, here's some things we're doing, here's some things that we could do down the road, and maybe say, hey, there is a possibility if these don't change, we may be looking at summer school down the road. And that's the communication piece that we're working on our end.
And every parent will get a student progress report and conferences coming up in October. They'll get one that shows all the, how the student did in this testing period and compared to last year. So, all right, Forrest, thank you. Okay, so this is, sorry, I got a little tongue-tied. This is the dyslexia screener and our math reading fluency. So if you can see, there are flagged areas under the universal screener outcome. Those are students who have been flagged with the possibility of having dyslexia. Now, this is not a diagnostic tool, this is a screener. So it shows us that this student may have some difficulties, and so we need to look at it a little bit further. We cannot diagnose a student with dyslexia, but what we can do is identify the areas of need where their skills may be lacking a little bit and focus on those during our intervention and BSP times to support that need. And then we are grouping students with similar needs during those times to really focus and hone in on that.
So what's the follow-up after this? So I mean, what's that process flow?
So we just started this, and then what's going to happen if a student is flagged, the interesting thing about math fluency is you can go in at any time and listen to any student's oral reading. So you can identify, are they leaving off final ending sounds? Are they leaving off beginning sounds? Are they skipping words? Are they missing vowel combinations somewhere in there? So our title reading teachers know their students as well, so they can look at these lists, they have access, and they can say, okay, I do see that student for these needs, let me listen to their recording and see if it's in line with what I think it is. And so our title reading teachers are going to be vital in helping us with these students who are flagged to further screen and identify skills that need to be addressed.
Okay.
So those would be next steps at this time.
Okay. And then this kind of ties this all together. This is kind of a flow chart on how we use our map data. And I just put map in there, but it's all our data to determine intervention resources. And there's a lot of arrows and there's a lot of boxes. And this is something we just have slowly implemented, but this will provide direction on what we do with that data. So if you want to go to the last slide.
So as you can see, it shows, if a student scores in the 50th percentile or higher, we use the 50th percentile because we wanted to align with our special education department. And they say 50th percentile means a student is right on target. So if they're right on target, they're where they need to be for their grade level. So this you would just follow. If they hit the 50th percentile, you would follow the flow chart and see what your next steps would be. If they're in the 26th to 49th percentile, that would be our tier 2 students, our yellow students, and then you would follow that. It also has additional links for resources where teachers can assess further fluency, comprehension. It has resources for intervention for different programs. And as you can see, it has phonics intervention and all that. And then if it's red, if they did not meet the 25th percentile, or they're below that, then is the student on an IEP? If they are, talk to their special education teacher, how can we support them further? And it just moves on down the line with further resources and suggestions for teachers to use.
Is it 50th percentile of what? Is it the class? Is it the grade? Is it the state? Is it...
It's like a norm reference. So it's the 50th percentile. It's kind of how math does it. I don't know how to quite explain it.
It's national norm.
National norm,
Okay.
yeah.
So does that change if like the nation's just getting worse and worse at math?
That's a good question.
It could possibly change. And again, this is the rule, but there's always exceptions, and that's when we have our care team meetings and further discussion on individual kids that we may not be finding resources in that intervention.
And we are using some phonics programs. We have Haggerty. We also have Sunday, which is an Orton Gillingham program as well that we use during interventions. And also Sunday is used every day in our classrooms for K through second grade. Integrity is used every day in our classrooms from pre-K, our 3-year-olds, all the way up to 5th grade. So,
And that's just something we've implemented in the last 2 years, so.
I have a question.
yes.
So the students that may need educational enrichment share with gifted teacher. Isn't the gifted program quite full? Like, it's not like there's, right?
Well, it's more for ideas and strategies and things to use. Maybe it's a project-based learning activity that student can use to research something that they're
But
interested
then
in,
who's
something
gonna-
to extend the learning.
I guess my question is, can there be an other, look, I'm not an educator, I'm just asking a question, but can there be additional options to that? Because even if you do a project-based learning, whatever you just called that. But even if you do that, you need somebody to oversee that. But my impression, in the elementary school, and you can correct me if this is not how it goes, but so if a student is needing extra things, right? So usually it depends on what teacher they have, because some teachers have they have the extra time, or they can identify those things. Some teachers, do more with that student than other teachers do, and it just depends on what teacher they have. So I'm not faulting the teacher for that, but I guess what I'm saying when I see the flow chart is that if your solution to that is going to the gifted teacher, my understanding of that is that that's first of all, that's a process to get in. Second of all,
we're asking, see, the gifted teachers, they have so many resources and they want to share, and they often ask, if you see anybody that think might be identified, only bring it to our care team. And some kids don't get identified, but they're really, really good students. They're very challenged. They want more and more. And even though they don't qualify for gifted, there's nothing wrong with us having them do some of the activities that they would be doing if they were identified as a gifted student. We're just using that as a resource because they have great ideas to challenge those kids that are in tier 1, that are just, they're kind of bored, I got this stuff down, give me something else, but they don't qualify for gifted. That's what we're doing.
I guess I'm just,
Let me say something.
yeah, go ahead.
Didn't you say you were already dividing them by tiers for MTSS groups?
Yes.
So I'm assuming you have an enrichment group
Yes.
that you would be getting with. So if there's an enrichment group, those students are going to be in that group and they would be getting ideas from the gifted teacher.
We're really
So it's not within the class, it's not necessarily the classroom activity, it would be an enrichment, correct? Outside of that, during that MTSS time.
Yes. So maybe while a student is getting assistance with maybe phonics that they're struggling with, the student who already has mastered all of that is in another group who is doing something above and beyond what maybe their grade level would be expected, and they would be extending their learning.
Okay. I was misinterpreting it. I have seen where students get projects, but I have also seen where when they're allowed to move into a different, I know that it's not always ideal to move them to a different class, that's maybe move them up a grade, a class, I don't think that that's something that people love. That's not their first choice, right? But I think that there's a huge benefit for the student in doing that. So maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but I just feel like at that point when you have a student like that, maybe there should be some, does that make sense?
There should be. If
If you get to that point, you can get tested for gifted and
Right.
and
And
move
there's a lot
on
of-
to get an IEP and have a special program.
But you have to have a certain IQ for gifted.
There's a lot of- What we want to do, Kaya, is we want to give as many opportunities for every kid, whatever their level is, to try to reach their potential. The toughest thing about this is the progress monitoring piece of how often, you can't switch week by week. Sometimes you may have to make a move, but that's probably the toughest thing is how often do we rearrange our groups and how often do we come back with our data? And that's why we're hoping that our restructured PLCs, focusing on those things, will allow that fluid movement of kids from one group to the other, so we're not stopping and say, hey, we're not going to do anything today because we're making groups. We want to have that fluid movement from whether you're going to go up or maybe we need to come down and do some more of it, remediate with
Okay.
groups. Did that answer that?
Yeah, I think I was maybe misinterpreting the solution. Because when it says share with gifted teacher, to me that means one thing, but I think that it encompasses more than what I was thinking it did.
Yeah.
We have to share around it. That's the great thing about the BSP program and something that's called incidental benefits. We can have a gifted teacher working with their student and other students can still receive that support indirectly. And we do it all the time with our parish support classrooms.
Thank you.
That's the last one. Thank you guys. Have any other questions? Feel free to email or anything, and be happy to. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. We look forward to coming to the elementary school in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm right over here. So,
All right, we'll talk about that at the end. Aaron.
All right, we're a little different tonight, so of course, can I plug in over there or reach over here? Yeah, right here.
I got a chair for you.
I'll just pop it in. Right. All right, good evening. I'm here to give a report on the high school bond project. So y'all should have this in your handouts, but we'll go through kind of a quick summary update. Budget-wise, project is still in really good shape, moving to the construction GMP and the soft cost and contingency accounts set for the project. And you can see the current and forecasted contingency detail for the district GMP contingency are forecasting a little bit lower than the current value for just some kind of outstanding change orders and changes that are being processed. But otherwise, the things are in good shape. Substantial completion schedule-wise, still shooting for November 29th for substantial completion of the new learning center, the cafeteria, and the admin areas. Weather days this month was within the contracted weather days amount. There are 6 days over so far in this phase of the project, but they haven't actually, as you can see, impacted the anticipated substantial completion date. So key deliverables, only item listed this month is expecting the appliance delivery for all the new appliances in the education wing at the end of September. That did slip a little bit from last month. We're staying on top of the manufacturer with discontinued items and delays in appliances that continue, but we'll double check on that date. We still have quite a bit afloat as we order those early. Some other key milestone dates upcoming. There's finished paint going on in Building F, which is the 2-story learning center. Looking for a state health inspection for the new kitchen around November 24th. And then the learning center certificate of occupancy inspection will be held approximately November 5th. Furniture and other equipment for the new learning center will start to arrive on December 1st. That install process will take a couple weeks prior to the physical move, which will happen just before the holiday break. Then the project will shift to the second major phase of the, athletics building. So that'll start with abatement and demolition of the East Campus at the end of December, beginning of January, followed by starting footings and foundations on the new athletic building. So McCown Gordon still continues to do a really good job watching the safety on the job site, and there have been no accidents.
I got a question, a couple questions.
Yeah.
So, sorry, so but we aren't tracking the construction conditions. contingency that's part of the GMP, is that, I mean, at least it's not on this sheet, is that right?
Correct. I am tracking it. It's on the last page of my report.
Okay.
There's a column that shows that. It's just not broken out on that front page.
Do you, off the top of your head, you know, where we are with regards to percent complete of work versus, we talked about this several months ago, right? I mean,
Mhm.
where are we at with percent complete work with regard to versus spending and contingency? Just to see, because we're getting ready to do one of the riskiest things on the project after the first of the year, which is the demo of the.
Yeah. No, risk-wise, we're still in really good shape. The project is a little bit over 50% in terms of actual dollars spent. And it depends on which contingencies you throw into the calculation. But the construction contingency itself is, I think, under 20% spent.
Yes.
And then you have, the GMP owner contingency and the other contingencies that are all well under that 50%. So I can do the calculation on each individual one. I just haven't done it in the last month or two specifically, but.
That answers my question. What's the duration, what's the time frame for the duration of the move? Because it's starting on the 20th, is that a week, a couple days?
Physical move will actually be 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
So everything will be packed, and I was gonna get into the details, we just had the first move meeting with the move contractor that was hired. So the administration's working through some scheduling with the teachers and the end of semester planning. But the teachers, everybody will be completely packed in boxes. And then the physical move will take 2 to 3 days down the hall, across the parking lot to the new building. And then when teachers come back to school after the break, they'll have a day or two, a couple days to reset up their classrooms before school starts.
But their stuff will be in their classroom when they show up?
Yes, and all they'll have to do is unpack.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on the first page? Okay, planning for athletics addition, West Campus renovation, so that continues to get kicked off, doing some rough-in coordination for the precast panels. County Warden is reconfiguring their site layout. They will be moving their construction trailer from the west side over to the southeast side, and they've been coordinating that with Mark and his staff and Mitch. Excuse me. Site landscaping, talked about last month that was put off with the summer work in the new parking lot out front due to the summer weather, so that will be installed here in end of October, early November. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as I talked about earlier, appliances have been ordered, furniture has been ordered. We're working through kind of the little odds and ends pieces with the different curriculums, ordering some specific stuff for the art and the science classrooms. And then move management, as I mentioned, we had a kickoff meeting, trying to nail down that exact date. It's looking like, it's looking like the move date will be the 20th or the 21st of December to get that moved over. Parking lot and traffic flows. It's ongoing conversation pretty much daily, working with the county warden and the staff, kind of educating everybody on the new traffic flows with the partial parking lot renovation. So got some temporary signs up that I think have helped that a little bit. And we're just going to continue to evaluate additional signage and striping that may help that before it changes again next semester.
Hey, Aaron, so when it says it's changed again in January, is it going to be like the existing pattern that there is now when a building opens up and then it'll change after the students show back up at some point? Or is it trying to get it all changed before the students show up?
Before the students show up.
Okay.
So over the break, they'll shut down, they'll set up their new construction fencing on the east side,
Okay.
and which will shut down that east side parking lot. And they'll open up the new parking lot on the west. So you'll have the new final bus route where all the buses will be coming in the west and going around that. And then only the car traffic will come in the east entry and go around that and go straight back out. They won't be able to turn south or park along the west side anymore. And so it'll stay that way all the way through until the whole thing opens up.
So we get the big change done when they show up right after the holiday?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be the same from now until they leave in December, the students leave in December. And then when they come back in January, it will be different.
Okay.
And then project design enhancements was the last item I have on here. And I'll switch to a different presentation to go through the follow-up we had on that fence. A couple pictures included with some descriptions. You can see Barb was talking about earlier the new kitchen. All the kitchen equipment is installed. I'm starting to get some storefront and casework going on in the building. And then this is the framework of the new greenhouse that's going out south of the CT. So some fun stuff. And then the contingency change order log I mentioned there. Okay, so I'll switch. Oh. To the first page. Okay, so we went through this last month, and it was hard to read up there, but do you guys have this in the packet?
Yes.
Okay, so line item 17 was what we talked about last month in regards to the fencing along the north property line. So just a reminder, what we were talking about, kind of example photo, with the aluminum fence and the columns was originally proposed, as well as some landscaping to frame in the new entry there. So if you recall, the original proposal was a 6-foot aluminum fence with 6-foot columns along there, and the board requested some additional pricing and options to look at. So here's the 4 options we kind of put together. So option 1 was what was presented last month for the 6-foot fence. And this is broken out a little further so you can see how that pricing breaks down. It includes landscaping, mow strip, signage, and kind of miscellaneous dumpsters and things like that. So option 1 is the 6-foot fence, 6-foot columns, which was the $129,000. Option 2 takes it down to a 4-foot aluminum fence and columns. As you can see, that doesn't really drop the price a whole lot because it's really, the fence is about the same, so you get a little bit better on the column masonry. Option 3 was not something specifically requested, but was proposed by the contractor, is they call it a residential grade aluminum fence. So same warranty, same type of finish. It's just a little bit thinner metal. And as you can see, there's a pretty good cost difference in that versus the commercial grade fence. All the other items in that option are the same. And then finally, option 4 would be removing the masonry columns and the signage and just going back with a, this pricing was for a 6-foot, but could also be a 4-foot black chain link fence. So after putting this together, we had one other option thought that is not priced on here, but wanted to throw out, is that even if you went with option 4, you might consider keeping the columns, the 2 columns on either side of the drive entry. Because I have noticed now that everything's cleaned up around there and the ditch is cleaned out, it is, you can kind of drive by there and not see where the turn-in is. So having columns around there, I think, would serve that purpose as well as making it look nice. So that was just kind of an idea that we had talked about as a project team. So any questions? Oh, I didn't point out, I broke out the cost, we talked about the sidewalk. So, as I mentioned before, the sidewalk is going to go in some manner because it will be temporarily the way to get to the field when they shut down that part, the east parking lot. So the pricing in this is just to make the design a more permanent sidewalk design, and it extends it just a little bit further. And so really you're paying an extra $6,000, $6,600 to leave that sidewalk in permanently and be an additional path for people to get from the parking lots to the athletic fields and other things.
So is the plan to have in there temporary, it's kind of driven by time of day, but you know, that entrance and outlet of that sidewalk is right at the main entrance, you know? As far as, because I mean, typically with the site, you're trying to figure out, okay, how to minimize the potential interactions between different types of vehicles and pedestrians. Was that discussed as far as when that would be used and how many students would be crossing there and what time of day that would be occurring? If it's an access point that's going to be used regularly for an extended period of time.
It will only be used regularly during the construction of the new athletics division.
To really answer your question though, I mean, we haven't talked about the number of PE classes that are going to be going to the football field. That's kind of what you're referring to?
Or, I mean, if
because we won't have access
because
to the south. I mean,
spring, so that you have then track and you have, you know,
PE classes.
It's really the only way to get over there once they shut down that east side without walking straight across the practice field.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not saying it, I'm just saying, is there a risk there, or is there, you know, if that is a consideration, does that change the calculation? I don't know, but.
Yeah, the only other way to get over there would be to cut straight across the practice field. Because they're gonna have that whole east side from the existing gym up to the edge of the practice field.
Yeah, I always say that because it's like you're directing, funneling pedestrians to the same point you're directing and funneling traffic. And if that happens at different times, that's one scenario. And
well, I mean, it shouldn't be happening during drop off and pickup because that's when they drop off and pick up. And there will be a painted crosswalk there if people follow crosswalks.
It's going to take some supervision.
Yeah. So, yeah.
You have trouble with
that,
you know, professional firms have trouble with people, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really the only way to get out there and around, and it will only be it'll be for that time period while the building's being built, and then the main access to the field for PE classes and student athletes and such will be actually out of the gym on the south side, across that east access road and then the sidewalk down there.
Is that something you could quantify, just to say, hey, because maybe it's at different times it's a non-issue, but is that something that you could, you know, look at just to double check and say, okay, you're going to have somebody out there?
Well, I mean, we'll talk to Mr. Farrar.
Yeah.
But we hadn't discussed that at all.
Yeah.
questions for Aaron so we can keep moving through?
So, there's an action item tonight for this.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay. So,
You
you
stick
know,
around a little bit, maybe? I don't know if you, can you maybe stick around, because I know there's a lot.
I will try, yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, that's it on that one.
Yeah, I just thought we maybe go through the report, and then we'll, if there's further questions, we can hit them up on action items.
Am I staying up here for
You got,
HVAC?
we can address those during the,
We can talk about that at the action.
at the action
Okay.
item. I think that would be a good time for that, Aaron.
All right, anything else?
Any other questions for Aaron?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and help. All right, that is the end of all the presentations. Move on to the consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Can I ask something on that cemetery settlement? Was the settlement this within our budget that we set aside?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion carried. With that, we'll move into reports, I believe. Sorry, many things here. All right, we're at patron comments. I've got 3 people that commented, and we get some more in.
Well, nobody's watching in favor.
Can you get, here. I think you could.
I threw 3 in because I didn't know if you would limit the time I had to speak.
Everybody's limited to 3. Or limited to 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I got 9 minutes.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I threw 3 papers.
No.
Anyway, all right. I think Kylie Lowe was the first one that signed up. Hope I said that right. Sorry.
It's a bit of spelling.
I just want to remind everyone that, I mean, there's a 3-minute time limit. I mean, let's keep it respectful to members of the board and staff. I do want to also, we're on YouTube. I mean, the district does not block or do content. I can't say what YouTube does to things after the recording's put out there. So that's just kind of putting everybody on notice. So with that, please go ahead.
First, I want to say thank you to Jim for taking a moment to reflect on 9/11 and to remind us of how that brought us together. Yet, I'm here representing parents that feel like we're discussing policies that divide us. Good evening, my name is Kelly Lowe, and I am representing the Tonganoxie Parents for Medical Freedom and Fresh Air. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I would like to start off citing Kansas Statute 21-5601, titled Endangering a Child. Endangering a child is knowingly and unreasonably causing or permitting a child under the age of 18 years to be placed in a situation in which the child's life, body, or health may be endangered. I could talk to you for 20 minutes about the risk that masks impose on a person's emotional and physical health, but I don't have that much time to speak. So here are just some of the harmful side effects. Depression, anxiety, compromised cognitive performance, suicidal ideation. One study found a 334% increase in self-harm claims in children aged 13 to 18. Delayed language development, headaches, dizziness, increase in heart rate, respiratory rate, and blood pressure. There's also an increase of carbon dioxide levels of the air that is rebreathed while wearing a mask. One study found that after 45 seconds of wearing a mask, regardless of what type of mask, CO2 levels were 2,000 parts per millimeter above OSHA's max limit of 5,000 parts per milliliter in confined spaces, which is what our masks create. Elevated CO2 levels in the body can lead to confusion, dizziness, drowsiness, unconsciousness, effects in the cardiovascular system, central nervous system, and kidneys. Similarly, it showed that after 45 seconds of mask use, the confined airspace caused oxygen levels to drop below 19.5%, the minimum that OSHA allows. Decreased levels of oxygen in the body affect neurological systems, cardiovascular systems, increase your risk of cancer, and decrease the immune system. With each exhalation, microbes are released and some are trapped in our masks. The conditions in our masks from our warm breath air, create the conditions and breeding grounds for these microbes. A study in Florida that collected cultures of worn masks by children found 11 pathogens, including those that cause tuberculosis, pneumonia, and meningitis. Our children are rebreathing those pathogens. I would also like to note the huge increase of RSV and hand, foot, and mouth cases, evidence that suggests that masks are doing more harm than good. Statistics show that children have a 1 in a million chance of dying from COVID. So we ask you this, are you willing to accept the responsibility if a child is harmed emotionally, mentally, or physically as a result of your mask mandate? We ask that you give us the liability, allow and accept parents to write their own mask exemptions. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
You signed up with the other online, but you got 3 minutes.
Okay. I'll start by saying I'm not here to attack anybody or discuss anything. I think she just covered everything fully, completely with masks. I'm here to introduce myself. My name is Eric Lang. Over the last 20 years, I've been involved as a fireman, a paramedic, a coroner, as well as a sheriff's deputy. I have transported, taken care of many sick people, injured people over the years. Question here tonight that I want to ask the board is, or educate the board on is, obviously you guys have concerns about liability. Who's liable for students that are sick or injured while they're at school? Well, liability comes on parents. It's parents' job to recognize when their kid's sick prior to sending them to school. Or a school nurse that recognizes the kid is sick and sends them home. It's not a school job to identify who needs quarantine, who doesn't. Liability comes in as well as in the last year over the Spark Initiative, which was money received by the school districts from the federal government to ensure safety of what's going on inside the building. Obviously, masks do not work. They do not prevent the spread of any disease or virus because they just do not. I'm not going to touch on it, she covered it. But what I'm going to talk about is what do the schools do to prevent the disease and spread of any kind of virus or bacteria with the Spark money provided? Did the schools implement particulate filters in their heating and air conditioning units? Did they provide UV lighting inside their heating and air conditioning units? Because in any building, when you have centralized heating and air, everything we do and breathe gets circulated throughout the entire building. A virus, a disease, bacteria goes up in the vents and it goes to every room and every classroom. So I'm asking the board, has the school done anything to ensure safety outside the measures of trying to implement masks? I don't know that they have. And so I'm here today to talk about if we're going to mandate kids to wear masks, teachers, parents, all of us in this room, knowing that they serve no purpose, what are we doing outside of masks? What are we doing in the real life situation, in the classrooms day to day, in the school buildings day to day to prevent any kind of bacteria or virus to spread? The way I see it, nothing's happening. Again, there's not UV lighting in every single classroom. They're not fogging the classrooms with chemicals, like what we have to do in the EMS world. We have to fog our ambulances, we have to wait 10 to 20 minutes, then we have to turn on UV lighting, we have to wait 30 minutes.
Change mask between stations.
I'm sorry, your time's up.
Damn, that was 3 minutes. I turned in another page. Okay, so in summary, basically, I want you guys to consider the other preventative measures of liability. It isn't a school liability, it's a parent liability. And again, under KDHE, the school board dictates what happens within a district, not the health department. So.
There was someone signed up on the lawn, or got a hold of Audra that didn't turn in a paper. Is it Shay Partridge?
Well, if they're not here, I'll talk some more.
All right. Next is Susan May.
I don't know if I can see over the podium. We'll see. Getting a little short. I'm gonna try really hard. I timed myself. I can be a talker. As heated debate and legal battles about medical freedom are occurring across the country, we all face choices about masks, vaccines, and testing. Make no mistake, healthcare and science communities are divided on these issues. There is science and lots of evidence on both sides of this issue. Our community is divided on these issues as well. Compelling arguments can be made on both sides. So the question is, who decides which science and what medical guidance is right or wrong? Who gets to make decisions for each of us and our children? As adults, we make medical decisions for ourselves, and as parents, we make medical decisions for our children. To find these answers, we must consider state and federal law and medical policies that govern patient rights. I experienced this personally when I had two highly regarded specialists disagree on whether to remove my internal organs to fight the cancer that I'm currently fighting. Both highly specialized, completely different opinions. So, I had to use my autonomy. I had to use my patient autonomy to make that decision. Our medical community is built on a foundation of patient autonomy. That is the right of patients to make decisions about their medical care without their healthcare provider trying to influence the decision. Patient autonomy doesn't allow for healthcare providers to educate patients, but it does not allow the healthcare provider to make that decision or to force that decision for the patient. In regard to making medical decisions for children, the law acknowledges the medical decision-making is a fundamental parental right. According to the Supreme Court, the fundamental rights are rights that are so implicit in concepts of ordered liberty that neither liberty or justice would exist if they were sacrificed. Polka versus Connecticut. To further cite the Supreme Court, parental rights are perhaps the oldest of fundamental liberty interests recognized by the Supreme Court. Troxel versus Granville. Parental rights are further described and protected by the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Kansas Religious Freedom Act. To quote the Kansas statute 605301 through 605305, the fundamental right of every parent to control the care and custody of such parents' minor children, including, but not limited to, control over education, discipline, religious and moral instruction, health and medical care, psychological and emotional well-being. Every individual in this room, every single one of us has the legal right and responsibility to make our own medical decisions. We also, as parents, have the right to make those decisions for our children. No one, not one of us in this room, has the right to make those choices for another person in this room or for another person's child. To be clear, masking, testing, vaccinations are all medical decisions. They all have risks and benefits. And those risks and benefits vary greatly depending on that specific individual and child. For instance, one of my children has a visual impairment. And she's had COVID. So she's fully has natural immunity. So wearing a mask creates a very big distraction for her because she's constantly getting the fog that many of us glass wearers experience. Is the school board prepared to be held liable for the harm caused by forced masking of children? Providers cannot make medical decisions without consent. Why in the world would the school board be able to do that?
Ma'am, your time is up.
I just wanted to quickly, there were a lot of questions about the transportation department and busing. I recently was fired for refusing to force children to wear masks.
Ma'am, I think you're crossing into a line of things that...
If you can allow me to finish my sentence. I care deeply for this community. I care deeply for the students. I've driven for 5 years. And I would ask respectfully for the board to not only consider the concentration of students on buses, but the duration of time that these students are on buses. Sir, respectfully, I was driving 2 routes combined. I had children getting on at 6:15 in the morning and getting off the bus at 4:45. It really does affect You know, when you're closed cabin air, when we get into winter and those windows are shut, and you've got 77 kids on a bus for 2 hours, that's a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Hargrove.
Hello. First of all, I want to say thank you for your time. I would like to talk to you about the pay-to-ride transportation. I do live within the 2.5 miles, so I declined regular pickup and drop-off, but wanted my kids to be able to occasionally be dropped off at my sister's house. Say, for example, I need to take my child to an ortho appointment, and I make the appointment at the end of the day, so where she misses the less amount of school. I'm now being told that they cannot ride to my sister's house without me paying. Or even, for example, if my child has a sports activity and it starts at 3:30, I now have to pick up my other 2 children out of school early to be able to make it to the sporting event. I am a single mom, and my family is my support system. Like, I need to be able to use them. I need help, and that's my help. My next concern is how at the last board meeting, I shared with you a situation where my daughter had forgot her mask and was standing outside because she thought she couldn't enter the building. Then this year, the children are told that if they forgot their mask, that they have to pay $1. If they do not have $1 on them, that they have to call their parents and have their parents come either bring them a mask. How can you mandate masks and then require payment as a child forgets one? We've all had times where we have forgotten things. Next, I disagree with the mask mandate. Absolutely, do I care for my child, for every child's safety as well as education. With that being said, I have a kindergarten who is learning letters, sound, reading, etc., but the teacher's mouth is being covered. Children learn by mimicking, by seeing, the movements and all of that. With your mouth being covered, this makes learning for the child harder. Lastly, I would like to turn to the audience and just ask for a silent show of hands of who disagrees with the mask mandate. Thank you. With that being said, your board members voted in to represent the people. I think that the show of hands show where we stand. And then lastly, as a United States Marine, I will always stand and fight for what I believe is right. Thank you very much.
Courtney Wagner.
My name's Courtney, and I have this binder full of journal articles. They're all organized so I can have those of you that know me appreciate it. First of all, thank you for your time this evening. That is all the journal articles. I am a pediatric registered nurse and I work in cardiology. For reference, I do have 5 boys. 2 have graduated out of this district. 3 are currently enrolled remotely. I have 2 main points that I like to focus on relating to masking. I don't publicly speak, I'm super nervous. The impact of masks that they have on the foundational learning aspects of younger students, and that is related to the blue tabs that are in that binder. Is one point, and I'm glad Mr. Mann highlighted that in his presentation in the next point that I have, because it makes a great segue to my second point. He stated that we have a lot of kids with sensory issues. My second point relates specifically to students of any age that rely on the audio-visual learning style. Additionally, as we were talking, you guys were talking, Mrs. Blazo referenced a slide that appeared to highlight a significant amount of students that potentially could fall into consideration for rollout of dyslexia. further highlighting the importance of this learning style.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to formally request that the board consider allowing parents to be able to sign a waiver releasing the district of liability, by giving the parents the freedom to choose what is best for their students regarding masking, testing, and vaccination. And I would like to specifically challenge the district administration as to when they knew about the specific topics that are going to be discussed later this evening that I believe were earlier listed on the Board of Education documents as discussion items that have since been made to be approved this evening. And maybe discuss for everyone how those items get moved from discussion items to approved items for those here this evening. Thank you.
The last request I have is from Karen Hershey.
I too have something for you, and I will be emailing this. That way, all of you will have the information. What I've given is 47 studies and 32 links that either prove the ineffectiveness or show the side effects and health implications of masks. As stated on their website, the FDA considers masks that are used related to COVID as medical devices. Since you are requiring the administration and application of these medical devices, you are required to obtain informed consent from the guardian of or from those who will be wearing the medical devices. In order to obtain informed consent, you must provide an understanding and the nature of the device or procedure, such as testing, which is proposed to be approved tonight, an understanding of the risks and benefits of the device or procedure, as well as offer reasonable alternatives to the device or procedure and understanding of the risks and benefits of those alternatives. Informed consent cannot be obtained under coercion, undue influence, punishment, or reward. Saying a child will not be able to ride a bus, attend in-person public school to receive a free public education, participate in sports or school activities if they don't wear a mask is a form of coercion. How many parents or staff members were given a paper providing the risks and the benefits of wearing a mask for 7 to 8 hours a day? How many parents were asked for parental permission for the application of a medical device upon their child? So at this point, it doesn't appear that you have met the FDA criteria for fully informed consent. In our culture, for a school to unilaterally require masks, putting children at risk in exchange for financial gain or compensation, such as receiving federal funding, is deplorable. If after learning of the risks and benefits and alternatives to wearing masks, parents decide that their children should or should not wear a mask, that is their call, not yours. By the way, parents and staff members, look into Kansas Senate Bill 159, sections 59 and 60, regarding state funding and discrimination using vaccine passports, which are defined as written or electronic documentation of an individual's COVID vaccine status. You want a solution? Look to Spring Hill's example. Thank you.
Move on to item 7.1, Superintendent's Report.
Okay, well, first of all, we had, on September 8th, we did have our next step of the master planning process, which was the input from our Tommy Strong and from our district site council. And good conversation. Aaron Merrill was there, Amber Beverly was there. And a report following that meeting will be provided to the board at a later date. So more of a synopsis of what all took place, the discussion that took place in the master planning process. The listening tour, you know, we might have got a little bit ahead of ourselves, just a little bit. You know, the elementary signed up for October 5th for the Board of Education to visit the elementary, and then following that, the middle school quickly followed with another date. And so there has been a request that maybe to have better participation from the board, we might try to coordinate that all on one day, you know, so people aren't taking off multiple days. You know, I get that, but we haven't gone that far yet. So I'll visit with Mr. Bothwell about that. As far as the maintenance truck, Justin, you asked about that, and that is, we don't have the bids on that. It's a state bid truck, and it's built into our capital outlay expenditure. It's not a particular line item like I do with buses, but it is a state bid vehicle, and we probably will be revisiting that next month. And then the building and goals, everybody's working hard on their professional goals, administrative goals. I've only got maybe 1 or 2 left to receive probably this week. I'll compile all those and organize them and start studying those. But I think we're off to a good step with the administrative goals, and their building goals are really very strong. So there we are. That's all I have.
Any questions for Lauren?
Yeah. So the maintenance truck, are we going to table that as an action item?
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. We're not ready.
All right. Any other questions? If not, item 7.2, Tanya.
All right. The elementary gave you a small preview of what they're looking at with MAP scores and state assessment scores. I wanted to go over with you tonight just some brief information. This is not intended to go in depth tonight. It's intended just to give you a snapshot of our state assessment scores from last May. So I have included the 2020-21 Kansas assessment results for English language arts, math, and science. There are some other things in your packet that include understanding scale scores, performance level descriptors, and cut scores. So that will help you understand what those numbers mean and how they relate. There's also another document in there relating CAP scores to ACT scores. So what does it mean if my child scores this on a state assessment? What is my expected correlation for ACT scores? And then the last document that's in there is the Kite Parent Portal User Guide. This is new to parents. It was new last year. This was sent out toward the end of the year after we received our state assessment scores. So every parent, if you have a valid email address in Skyward, and if your child took state assessments, so grades 3 through 8 and then 10 and 11, you received an email from the district with how to log into your Kite Parent Portal and with the instructions that were attached, what to look at. So a couple of things that I wanted to make sure we understood tonight on how we're using this data. This data is not super usable toward the end of the year. When we take the assessments and get the results, it's the end of the year, and often it's after school has gotten out. So taking that data and using it to inform instruction for that particular class is not super useful. What I did like to see is what the elementary is doing and taking grade levels and following that class down to see, you know, what has that data done over time with that particular class, instead of looking at just 3rd grade every year or just 4th grade every year, comparing the actual same kids. So, also on this, they're using some information in their PLCs and their building work. We are also using building, district, and individual performance area deficiencies. So as you noticed on those reports, there were some areas of pluses, minuses, equals. That's what we're taking a look at on where we were deficient and looking at our curriculum. What do we have resources for? Where do we need to fine tune our teaching, our instruction, and our intervention programs? And then what we need to do to bolster that, or if we need new materials. We are also, and this is what I think is more applicable or more user-friendly to our teachers, is doing the interim predictive tests. If there are 3 test windows for the interim predictive test, they're during September, December, and February. So those take place before the state assessments. Those interim predictives are based on state assessments. So in the first test window, they take a portion of the standards and test the students over those. Then in the next window, it's a different set of standards, and in the third window, a different set. So if you take all 3 of those predictive interims, you are getting information from your students on how they would do on all of those standards when the state assessment comes up. It's actually based on state assessment. So I think this is a very good opportunity for our teachers to use these. We've given them in the past and in some areas as an option, but now we want teachers to use these to inform their instruction. So if they give the interim predictive in the first window, they can determine where their students are, how they're doing, and then better inform their instruction, determine what students need further remediation, what skills do we need to work on. There are also the interim mini tests. Those are separate. Those are not those 3 test windows that test broad amounts of information. The interim mini tests are actually devised by the teachers, and they can use those at any point during the school year. So if I'm really focusing on teaching fractions, I can give a mini test on fractions that will look much like what the state assessment will look like for the students, and be able to tell where they're deficient, where I need to work further in the classroom for those students. Another valuable piece to that would be the MAP data. Now, that is a different test. Now, a state assessment is just an achievement test. It's based on one day during the year, how a student did. But the MAP assessments, I feel, will give us a lot better information. We do take those for K through 8, they will be fall, winter, spring, and then high school, you typically give those fall, spring. That gives us really valuable information and breaks it down into smaller pieces, exactly what skills those students are missing. And then those students who are flagged, for example, on, say, our dyslexia screeners or other screeners that we do within MAP, we further diagnose out. So we give them a diagnostic tool and see where is it that, what is the specific skill that they're missing, what do we need to work on, and that has been more helpful for the MAP data. We have given it K through 8 for several years in the past. Now we've added high school, and high school is actually starting that this week. The progress monitoring is really important too. So between those 3 snapshots or 2 snapshots of the MAP data, we get into the progress monitoring. So now that we know those smaller groups of students that need that further attention or intervention, then we test them more frequently on smaller levels on very specific skills, so we see their progress and how they're doing on those skills that they were deficient in. And that's where those tiered systems of supports come in. Some people call it MTSS. It's different in each building. Here at the elementary, you heard it's called the BRAVE support period. So that's where they divide those out and work on those very specific skills. So this was just a very brief, broad introduction to you on state assessments. We'll be bringing you a lot more information this year as we take our MAP assessments and our interim predictive to see how we'll score on state assessments. Do you have questions on this? A lot of information.
Can I ask a question?
I mean, if you'd like to funnel your questions to the board or some things afterwards, I mean, we don't want to discourage it, but like Kai said earlier, the format, we still have several items we need to go. I mean, the public comment part of the meeting is over.
I can't, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The public comment part of the meeting is over. If you have some questions afterwards and you'd like to funnel that to Mr. Feldkamp or the
you
board
can reach out
members
to
or
me.
Tanya, we'd be glad to speak with you.
Because I emailed before and I never received it.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be disruptive. My only question is, you know, the board's discussing everything about education, which matters greatly. But you guys have a lot more time than what we do as public speakers representing parents, because we're limited on what we can talk about. I'm just trying to
the meeting,
why we're limited.
the stuff at that's the way that the whole, I mean, it's been set up that way before we got here. I didn't make any of these rules, I just followed them. And, I mean, there's a lot of times spent for dialogue outside the meeting.
Email.
Yes,
Our public.
yes. You're welcome to attend next month's meeting, and I'll put you at the top of the agenda for the public comment next meeting.
What's the expected response on those emails? Sarah? What's the-
Please email the staff, and they should be responding to you.
I did not mean to be disruptive. I've never been to a meeting. I just wanted to ask.
No, I appreciate that, thank you.
It's not a conversation.
Let's move on here. Is there any questions for Tanya? I think there's more to come on that. If not, we'll move to the action items. Item 9.1, approval of the USD appointment for the Tonganoxie Rec Commission. I think there was a recommendation in the packet. I don't know if there's any discussion.
I make a motion to approve didn't even have discussion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to approve action item 9.1, approval of the USD 464 member appointment for the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission.
Second. It's been moved and second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried.
I make a motion to
9.2 is the maintenance truck, but we're going to table that item
table it. That's what I was going to do.
We'll just table. 9.3 is the enhancement of the fence and the sidewalk. Aaron brought this up earlier. I assume there may be some questions and comments about that. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion on that one, but I think we had 4 options. We had on the agenda, we tabled last time, we've got 4 options. I don't know how the board would like to proceed with that.
I would like to make a motion to approve that. Where is the document?
Option 1, the 6-foot fence.
No, the second one.
4 foot.
Yes.
Is there any other discussion?
Why are you wanting that one?
I feel like it's a compromise. It's important to me that, I mean, we're building the new high school and making improvements so that we have, nice facilities. I think curb appeal is important. I think that it's a safety. There's columns on each side of the entrance. Aaron pointed out as a safety feature for identifying where that lane is. I think that it's, it's a permanent fixture there that will look good forever, and it'll further enhance, the curb appeal, which also affects the, when people drive by 2440, it's a high traffic route, and it just, to me, that there's value in that. So I know that there was some hesitation on the 6 foot, so I just feel like it's compromised.
I spoke at the last meeting and said that I felt like that it was something that we could do down the road. We have a lot of decisions yet to be made. The state matching funds for bonds have gotten less favorable, and I would still be in favor of waiting and doing something down the road. But
I mean, they're basically zero at this point.
what's that?
They're almost zero at this point. Is that right?
2%, yeah, it's just, factor is 0. That's the way we planned in the budget.
Is the sidewalk portion lumped in with the fencing, or is that separate?
It's a lot more difficult to put in the columns after the sidewalk is in. They really, Aaron can back me, but getting those columns in where they need to be should be done at the same time as the sidewalk going in.
The way it's currently designed, they have to go in at the same time as the footing section. Not to say that couldn't be adjusted in the best way.
It's just their recommendation to try to do it at the same time.
Did you make a motion?
What?
Did you make a motion, or did you just make a comment?
I did, but I can, what am I supposed to do, rescind my motion?
Well, I don't know if there's a second on that, or if there's any other discussion. I mean, we talked about I think I raised the 4 foot thing last time. It's only $6,000 or $7,000 difference, I guess. I don't know if really it's that material. Like, part of my worry on the 4 foot fence is it'll just encourage some people to try to hop over it and either hurt themselves or hurt the fence, but,
There's a pretty good ditch there. I don't think they would hurt themselves, I think.
The column height changes with the 4 foot to 6 foot, is that right? Because I see the price is different.
Yeah, 4-foot fences.
Yeah, you don't have these giant columns with a
4
tiny
foot,
fence.
2-inch column, yeah.
does there anybody want to second Kai's motion?
I'm just worried about we have what might be construction-wise a more complicated project yet to go, the last half of the project. And for the owner's GMP, we're almost halfway, or the owner's GMP contingency, we're almost halfway through that. And I would imagine when we get into the gym, there'll be some ideas on betterments and stuff like that, you know, I'm just worried that we're gonna deplete this money and then not have something that we want maybe more.
So right now, there's no fence there,
Nope.
right? There's nothing. So you have a practice field that youth practice at, like youth football, youth soccer. There's people that, I mean, I don't know, but there's also high school teams that go out there, middle school teams that go out there. So doing nothing in my mind is a safety issue. There's not really, like, I think you have to put some barrier between 2440 and the practice field. So,
I mean, it's been like that for.
I thought there wasn't, but they just.
There was a fence, there was a fence,
there was a fence.
it just got removed
Yeah.
because this project got developed,
Did-
the chain link.
Did the drainage get changed and resolved there? Because that was kind of a mud pit down there.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the whole scheme of the project too, like what percentage, this is I mean, I don't know, you don't have to answer that, but in.
$129,051.4 million.
For 120, right.
I mean,
So I think we're looking at safety, a 6-foot fence is a better option for safety than the 4-foot, if that's what we're gonna.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. But then you're tying in aesthetics too, because you can do a 6 foot chain link for.
so it's about $50,000 difference, which is like 0.1% of the project. I mean, I would support the 6-foot fence the way it's designed.
I would look at it not as a project percentage, it's a percentage of the contingency that we have available to us to do things like this, which it's.
I would just say options are good.
Or 10%.
If we spend money today, we don't have the option to do something later. Could we ultimately do the fence later? Of course, could we do something else later? Do that as well. Options are good.
Well, they're putting in a temporary sidewalk no matter what, so I mean, there's some of the works, it's gonna be more to do it later than it will be today. But
I make a motion to,
Do I have to rescind my motion? Or did it die? That was that one. I thought you said.
rescind it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
so I make a motion to approve the 6-foot fencing around that area.
Okay, I second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve option 1, the 6-foot fence. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay, motion failed. So we'll hold off on the fence unless there's any other options that are out there for right now.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So are you saying that you would be in, at some point in the project, we should revisit the fence before the project's over? So you don't foresee it being blank and nothing? Or?
I think there's a lot of things that we might revisit, that certainly being one of them. I'm concerned that there may be things that we would rather do, that maybe that 129,000 would be better off spent for. I don't know whether it makes it on the list or not, but I think it's worthy of consideration.
Or I could see a scenario where you want to do something and now because of budget constraints, now you're looking at a 71 or an $80,000 option instead of the 129 or whatever it might be. I'm not opposed to the fence. I just would rather not make the decision now until we're a little bit further along with the construction.
Okay.
And I think based on the price differences, if it was a priority, the difference between the $129,000 rate that looked one and the chain link is probably not material. So I'd be in favor of something that looks better. The timing's what concerns me.
All right. With that, we'll move on to item 9.4, the TMS THS HVAC preventative maintenance contract. Did you want?
Aaron, you want anything to address on that, or Mitch? They were both very involved in this whole process.
I mean, the information was in the packet, the scoring system and stuff. I don't know. Remember
I think
that?
unless there's any questions.
I think we did our due diligence.
I really like that scoring system. I don't know if you were behind it or not. But I like it.
Thank you, Drew. That means so much to me.
No, I think it's right where it needs to be.
Is there a motion or any other questions on that preventative maintenance contract? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve item 9.5.
9.4. I make a motion to approve action item 9.4, approval of TMS THS HVAC preventative maintenance contract.
Do we need to say per the recommendations of?
That would probably be helpful.
For the recommendation of administration.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, motion carried. Item 9.5 is the TES HVAC preventive maintenance contract. And it was a kind of similar process, same scoring system. Any other questions, comments? Motion to approve that?
Well, I mean, it's related. I mean,
Yes,
update on
we
that.
broke it up.
Okay.
We broke it. They're separate. They're different contracts.
Yeah, but for the complexity.
Right.
of this
Absolutely.
building.
Absolutely.
Is there a motion on action item 9.5?
Make a motion for action item 9.5, approval of TES HVAC preventative maintenance contract as it's presented by administration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. Item 9.6, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, very quickly,
more.
this is a timing issue. We're very aware that we need to take a hard look at the HVAC units on top of T-Packs, East Gym. We know that they're at the end of their life expectancy. We would like to put it out for bid to just find out exactly what the cost would be to replace those. And we have to do that now, because if we are to move forward and accept a bid for replacement, that wouldn't take place until after Memorial Day of 2022. And that takes some coordination with McCown Gordon and everything that's going on with the construction. But this is just to put it out for, to develop a RFP for bids, and that's all it is at this point.
And then the plan would be to use the bond fund,
Correct.
not capital outlay.
Correct. It's a pretty significant amount.
Any questions, concerns, comments, board members?
Is it a replacing kind?
Excuse me, I never.
Yes.
Yeah, replacing kind.
Yes, RTUs.
Tonight, you're just asking to bid. You're
Just a
asking to
bid.
get a
We got to
bid.
put this to develop an RFP to put it up.
It doesn't seem relatively harmless with the RFP if we're having issues with those units, trying to get coordinated with the new.
It's not a lot of effort to build it together, is that right, Eric?
Move to approve item 9.6, approval to send out bids for THS TFAC and East Gym HVAC replacement.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. All right, I think item 9.7, approval for the rapid COVID testing. I'll probably have to let Lauren kind of explain this. I think this is just another mitigant that can be used to help keep kids in school.
Right, and this is one of the grants that Tanya has applied for through KDHE. And one thing I want to clarify to everyone in this room that this, I'm sorry, I'll speak a little louder. My voice usually projects pretty well.
Well, it's sort of covered up.
But so, what I'm saying is, I know that there was some information out on social media that it's about parental permission and vaccinations. I want everyone to know, there is no way that any student would ever take not a vaccination, a test, a quick test without parental support, or they'd have to sign the document. I know there was things out there saying that how could the school district do that without parental permission, and that we can't. That is not the case. So I just want to make that clear. What we're talking about are some quick test kits. And I'll have Tanya explain it. She's the one that applied for this grant, and go from there if the board has questions.
You know, the one thing that we were concerned about here at school is how do we keep kids in school? We don't want to have to turn over a list to the health department. You know, we aren't the ones that quarantine. It's the health department who issues that letter of quarantine. So we want to keep our kids in school. We don't want to have to send them home, even if they're healthy, for 10 days for no reason. So part of this was a strategy to keep kids here in school. And so when they presented this information to us, we were very interested in testing plan number 2, which is called the Test to Stay and Learn. And the whole reason for that is just how do we keep kids in school and not send our healthy kids home for quarantine. So we looked at some of the information that they sent us, and we put together some information in your packet. It's listed as Tonganoxie USD 464 COVID Test to Stay and Learn procedures. So we have some procedures. I did meet with the school nurses today, and they are in favor of this, but they are adamant, as we are, no student will ever be tested without parent consent. We have to have that consent form signed first, or we will not test no matter what.
Is that informed consent or the consent form that you have on your website?
The consent is the consent to test. So if a student comes to us and is not feeling well, we will not test that student unless the parent consents to that. They have to sign this form. And what we would prefer is anyone in our elementary school, K through 5, pre-K through 5, if the parent consents to testing, we would want the parent here at the school when the testing is conducted. These are the rapid tests. It's just in the front part of the nostril, not the deep, but the front part of the nostril twice. It's put into a packet, and 15 minutes, the results will be ready. If it's middle school and high school students, those students, we have to, again, have parent consent, or we will not do the test. We encourage parents to be present when we do that, but they do not have to. They could give their consent and say, you know, go ahead and do it. We don't want to be there.
That's the consent.
Are these the tests that are proven not to differentiate between influenza A and?
I mean, I'm going to ask the audience just to refrain from interruptions. I mean, the board is having a discussion on the action
I'm
item.
asking what test the school's going to do.
The test.
That's a fair question.
The test is the Abbott Binax Now COVID-19 antigen test. What we had plans to do was if we receive a positive, we would send them on to the health department for verification if we receive a positive. Basically, if you're a parent who wants your child to be tested, and again, it's the parent's decision. If you want your child to be tested, we will certainly do that. And if they receive a negative, they stay in school. We don't want to send them home. We want to keep them here in school learning. So
If they're in close contact and they would be sent home otherwise, the testing is an option to keep them in here.
Yes, and there are different ways, you know, we can test. If they know they've been exposed, if they have symptoms, we can test. If they have been exposed but they're not showing symptoms but they still want to go through testing, we can do that. If they have been a close contact and the health department wants them to quarantine, we have the option of giving this test daily for 6 to 10 days depending upon the situation, so that we can keep those kids in school and not send them home. We want them in school. We don't want to have to quarantine those kids. So, board members, do you have any questions about the information?
Well, okay, so I have a lot to say, but first of all, what is so by providing this, well, okay, first of all, I think that it's always great when we take opportunities of grants and do that, so I think that that's good. However, in this case, I want to know what the benefit is to offering this in the school versus just not offering it at all and having our students go to their medical professionals and having them do it. So why would we do this?
Sure, that would put a lot of pressure on a parent. If we were telling them they could test to stay, they would have to go somewhere else to get that test done, either at Walgreens, CVS, the health department, wherever. When if we could offer that to them here and have a nurse administer the test here, we would think that'd be convenient for them.
It's not a one-time thing, it's every day for like 8 days, right?
Well, only if they have been a close contact and have been asked to quarantine. We can test them daily so that they can stay in school.
Okay, so I feel like the risk of doing this far outweighs the benefits of it, and the reason I feel that way is the reason I feel that way is because when you go to CPS to get tested, they'll take they hand you the bucket. So they open the window, you're in your car, and then they hand you a little bucket with your COVID test, and then you swab yourself, your kids swab themselves, they put them back in the bucket, and you give it to them. And I recently learned that the reason that they do that is because once you swab, and I'm not gonna say this right because I don't know the right terminology, but I think that once you're swabbing, it's like an aerosol. It's like I don't know. It's like aerosol sprays or whatever. And so then, if you do that in the nurse's office, then that creates that the spread of COVID.
There's a higher risk.
Or higher. I don't know how to explain this, but
You want him to explain it?
Nurse practitioner?
If you want.
no, I mean I don't think it's not like the format's not set up for other people to comment, but the thing is that I think that the other issue that I have is that so with the forms, so if I have a child in the middle school and they just need a signed form, I just also think as a parent, I would rather instead of having a signature from a parent, having it notarized if we're gonna do, I mean, I just think it gets so complicated and it's just not necessary because and then the other thing is, part of diagnosing somebody with COVID is not just the test because the test is inaccurate, 40% of the everyone in the audience, I'm so appreciative that you're here, and because everybody, Drew said this to me, I don't even know, when he first started on the board, but he said, the solution is always better when there's more people at the table. And so I am so thankful that everybody's here because we are all volunteers and we put a lot of time and energy into doing the best that we can do for the school, for the district, and everyone on the board has kids in the district. So that's a benefit because we're all trying to do, we're not representing ourselves, we're trying to represent everybody and do the best, but the thing is that it's such a polarized issue, and because I am saying something that might make you happy, I appreciate that. Obviously, it's way better to be on that side than the opposite, but the opposite, we have to teach our kids that they can come to the table and agree to disagree, and they can respect opposite opinions without getting angry at each other and hate, like, I don't want to leave here and have the people on the other side, like this, the other side of the argument hating me. And I don't think other people that have other viewpoints from you want to feel like you're gonna hate them when they leave here. And I've been on the board, this is my second term, and I have lost friends being on the board, and I have been screamed at being on the board. And this is such a, this is a very emotional subject for everybody, but like across the whole entire country, it's everybody, like people are just getting in fights and hating each other over it, and it doesn't have to be that way because we can learn and listen to each other. And many times I've come to school board meetings thinking, this is how I feel, and I've done my research and I've figured things out, and then I listen to the other people and I change. It's like a game time decision. Like you listen and you're like, oh, I didn't consider that, and so then you have a vote, and then you vote, and then you go home and you lay down and you're like, oh shoot, I should have said that, I should have said that, I didn't think about that. And so it's a process. Being on the school board is rewarding in so many ways, but we're not always going to make everybody happy, and we're trying to do the best. And like in this situation, like I love the clapping, but also it makes me uncomfortable because because like the people that spoke today, I mean, I can feel this way, but then somebody could counter it and with the opposite viewpoint and give me 55 articles of why they're right and everybody's right, right? And so anyway, that's a long, sorry. Thank you for listening. But back to this is that I feel like, I just feel, at the end of the day, I just feel like this is something that gives us more liability than it's worth, and I just think that we either need to table it and do more research on it and revisit it another day, or we need to just scrap it.
Are there other districts that are doing that, and what's their utilization rate on that, if they are?
There are a lot of other districts. A lot of districts piloted it last year for KDHE, and they're offering it to more districts this year. The benefit is that they keep kids in school.
And I know a lot of school districts tonight are having the same discussion.
Is there, I mean, the nurses hand out medicine every day.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're not, I mean, if they are positive, we're sending them somewhere else to confirm it. This is to say if it's negative, they can say it's school for the most part. I mean, I kind of understand the past point in terms of liability, but it seems like we're trying to offer something that would help people stay in school and be a benefit to some.
If you did it, people would have the choice of, like, you could have 0 people utilizing it, right?
Sure, yeah. If you don't want anybody to, if you don't want your kid to do it, don't sign the consent form.
How does HIPAA play in the fact that?
I'm sorry, I don't like to be a jerk, Derek, but I mean, it's.
My bad.
Anyway, is there a motion or an action from the board on this item?
I make a motion to table it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second?
Practicing medicine without a license is illegal.
Seeing none.
Be careful.
Okay, I'm gonna recess the meeting again and ask the audience to please refrain. If I have to, I will engage the police to escort you out. I don't like doing this. As Kaya said, I'm a volunteer and I spend an extreme amount of time on this to try to get back to the community, and it's, anyway, it has its rewards, but okay, we'll reconvene the meeting. The motion, Kaya's motion died lack of a second. Is there another motion on this item?
I don't have an issue with this. I think that it is absolutely up to parents. You know, if there was anything on here that didn't make it up to parents, I would absolutely not be in favor of it. That's not the case. Anybody can choose to use it. Anybody can choose to go get a second opinion. You know, I'm sure there is some liability, but I go back to the number one goal of the administration of this board is to keep kids at school, and this is a tool to do it. So I would be in favor of it as written.
Would you like to make a motion to approve?
Sure. I move that we approve item number 9.7 as recommended by the administration.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed? Motion carries. Final action item of the night is regarding recommendation regarding the mask mandate as it stands today. Lauren, you have some
So,
information?
Forrest, if you would put up my rationale for me, please. And this is, you all have this copy. This is for the people in the audience so that they can see that I wrote down some of my thoughts, and I just want to kind of go through this. I wrote these before the meeting, and I want to share them. On Sunday, August 22nd, our Tonganoxie High School experienced a considerable increase in quarantined students based on close contact tracing.
Sir. Officer, please come forward. The gentleman in the mask just needs removed from our room with an obscene gesture to the superintendent. Right there with the mask down and blue shirt.
Right there, knowing the glasses.
Glasses
He put me
right
on.
there.
That test you guys just approved is wrong 4 out of 10 times. As somebody who's...
I'm going to ask you, sir, please quiet down, or you can join your friend.
Listen to the rules. You're practicing medicine with civil lawsuit.
Yeah, big time.
As a provider who takes care of people,
Sir, please
Nurses
quiet
and
down.
doctors are trying to tell you something, and you ain't listening. You're doing it in front of everybody, sir. You're making kids wear masks while they're outside, running around on the playground, and then they gotta wear the same mask when they come back in. That's all you know.
We'll reconvene the meeting.
Okay.
Continue.
So it was on that date, I made a decision to begin wearing masks within our buildings, and it was based on close contact tracing protocol. This one decision allowed us to stop sending healthy kids home immediately and keep kids in the classroom. According to County Health Department, if you are wearing masks, nobody has to be sent home except the positive cases. And what I wanted to clarify is the process of how we have to report positive cases. We are required as a school district to do that. So USD 464 follows close contact tracing protocol, which is fully supported and recommended by KDHE, CDC, and Leavenworth County Health Department. If a student or staff is found to have tested positive, USD 464 follows Leavenworth County Health Department guidelines. So, from the date of a positive test, the health department will go back 2 days to contact trace. If our buildings are masked, it is a pretty simple process. We look at lunch and activities that were conducted without masks, such as athletics. If we are mask optional, we look at classroom seating charts. Any seats that are 3 feet or less from the positive case will be quarantined. Many of our classrooms can't accommodate more than 3 feet of social distancing, especially at our high school. If a student has been vaccinated, they are exempt from quarantine. That's a fact. If a student has tested positive in the last 6 months, they are exempt. If a parent wants to avoid a quarantine, they can agree to our testing program. This program will allow students to stay in school by getting a rapid test every morning for 7 days, and that is provided by the school nurse. And I want everybody from the Tonganoxie community to know that my ultimate goal is to keep students and staff face-to-face in the classroom. Our best option to reach that goal is to have students and staff and visitors masked indoors. That's really, my goal is to keep people in the classroom and not quarantine. So with that said, It's on the next page.
Yes. I think the recommendation is to continue with the mask mandate through the October 11th board meeting, suspend the gating criteria that's approved of August, continue to closely monitor all positive cases, we'll continue to track our numbers on our website on a daily basis. That's the motion, that's the action item that's in front of the board this evening. Is there any other questions or comments?
I have a question. So Leavenworth County puts these parameters on us. So in order to keep the kids in school, I support having a mask mandate because I want the kids to be in school, because it's also very unhealthy for them to be home quarantined. So the thing though is they say, Leavenworth County says if a student has tested positive in the last 6 months, they will be exempt. So can we as a school district add to that? Because they're using the reason that they can be exempt is because they're assuming that they have antibodies by having COVID.
I know where you're headed on this.
Yeah.
We checked with Leavenworth County after our visit today. They wouldn't support that at this time, with the antibodies.
Okay, so that's something that we as a school district can, like
We will revisit.
they override us, or they, put these recommendations for us. So we have to go to this Leavenworth County and work with them to
Yes.
see if they will add that to
Yes.
their thing. Okay.
That would be revisited at our October board meeting.
So just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, what I was gonna say, I mean, you already knew, because I had already talked to you about it, but what I was gonna say is that you can get a blood test that shows that you have natural immunity, you already have antibodies that give you immunity. So because they're using in that exemption, they're using that they're assuming you have antibodies. So it's the same thing. If you prove in a blood test you have antibodies, then you also would be exempt. So I will contact them and see, what if they'll, I don't know, I'll try.
It was fairly new to them, obviously. So
Right.
They just, Violet called us back this afternoon and just didn't endorse it.
Right. It just seems to me like.
I think we're committed to looking at this every month. I mean, I don't think
We'll come
any
back.
of us really want to do this.
I do feel like our hands are tied, really, with the health department making those determinations, parameters on us when we all want kids in school. There's nobody here that doesn't want kids in school. And to have them, if they have to wear a mask based on what the health department has given us, is where we have to be at this time. Hopefully that changes, and I would encourage people to communicate with the health department as well. Like we talked about, that communication is important. If you're unhappy with it, please communicate with the health department and also let them know your feelings, because it isn't just stopped here at the school board, it is a countywide, it's a statewide, and a national. And so all of those levels of communication is important.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion on.
Well, I just want to confirm my understanding of the quarantine charts. Because when we started, we were close to 0. And it looks like within 2 days, we went to 30 quarantine, and then another 2 days. So we had 30 quarantine on that Monday, the 23rd, or 29th. Within 2 days after that, because you go back in time.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
So within 2 days, we were up to over 60.
Correct.
And then once those contact tracing have been done, then it started to drop down. And we're kind of holding steady around 30.
And that's based on the fact that we mask mandated and the quarantine numbers dropped based on the process.
Well, because last year when we talked about, because the big discussion last year was hybrid, or some type of a hybrid option versus remote. And the big challenge at that, the challenge at that time is there's a significant part of the district that doesn't have very good internet service. There's a lot of working parents that aren't able to educate the kids at home for an extended period of time. I mean, I don't see any of those situations, those
we can't
underlying things.
Literally, we can't go remote this year based on state legislative action.
So.
We're limited to 40 hours total,
That's a state law, right?
state statute.
So if you were to, I mean, because if you go to a point to where something like Wellsville or, you know, where you get to a high enough quarantine number, the county or the state can shut down the building for 2 weeks.
It's Wellington.
Wellington, okay. So then in that scenario, do you have to then do summer school then after that?
Counted them absent.
Counted absent, okay.
So so Wellington closed down and then all the kids were counted absent for that time?
Correct.
And then,
And that shut down that shut down everything.
Everything.
Sports,
Everything for 2 weeks.
And so then we'd have to make, or Wellington would have to make that time up in the summer.
Possibly, they would have to look at the number of snow days they have. Their professional development days might come into play a little bit, but it's going to come down to student contact days or hours. Yes, Justin, you would have to configure, I don't know how many snow days they have to use, or how they might take away spring break, for example. That's probably what they're going to do.
I mean, can you use with our teacher contracts, I mean, if you were to have to do that, you're talking about a significant portion of the entire district. Does a current, I mean, there's got to be a cost to that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, on a per week basis, do we have an idea what that
We
is?
talked about that,
It's about 253 a week, 253,000 a week.
Pretty sizable potential financial cost if you have to do that.
what other districts were mask optional and then had to switch?
Almost everyone around us, McLeod, Perry-LeCompton, just off the top of my head, McLeod, Perry-LeCompton, Eudora, Lawrence Free State. And then as far as the other schools north of us, they already were mask mandated before going mask optional
Yeah,
like
but
we
they were
did.
mask option, all those schools you said.
They were mask
were
optional and then have gone mask mandated.
Because they had too many people.
Too many
quarantined.
quarantines. It's about quarantines.
I think that's the issue, and I really appreciate everyone coming to this meeting. I mean, it's a huge part of our civic duty to come to these meetings, but to me, this is not about whether masks stop COVID.
No.
I doubt if masks do stop COVID. This is a tool to keep the kids in school, period.
Based upon the current quarantine.
Based on the current quarantine.
Right. We know they don't.
Why?
The church says it works.
Because the county,
They're not safe, they're harming children. Is it worth it to harm children?
Order in the room. Action item 9.8 is on the table. Is there any, entertain a motion regarding that?
I'll move to adopt item 9.8 as recommended by the administration, with the caveat that we fix the board meeting date 1.2. It's listed for October 9th. I think it's October 11th.
You're correct. It's the 11th.
Is there a second?
I'd second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. Item 10, I don't think there's any reason for executive session, unless anybody has anything. We have the general board discussion topics. I probably got out ahead of Lauren a little, talking with TES and TMS. I mean, I know I've had a couple people, we've got locked in on a date on TES. A couple people have confirmed. I know the teachers, or the principals have set up some, times that would work on those days. I mean, if there's some other options or thoughts that board members have, please let me know. I mean, I think when we did it in the past, it was a pretty valuable experience.
You've done it in one day, also in 2 days.
You could do it.
I could see if TMS will move forward.
I keep this up.
Yeah, I know, I kind of figured you might be out, I didn't want to leave you out. I want you to be
If it
there.
was on one day, so
Okay.
I'd like to.
I'd love to participate. If they were in 1 day or 2 days, it would certainly be easier and great.
Okay, I'll try to push, if we push the high school back to like November or something, or do you want to even try, I mean.
Or even later.
I thought Mr. Mann thought it would be good that we were coming his soon after we, soon after we, he gave his presentation, so I thought maybe I would talk to Mr. Farrar a little bit more about when they do their presentation, try to do it in high school, but I can try to push TES, TMS together and see what we come up with. All right, so those, the other thing, we're gonna, mission, vision, goals, we're trying to find a time to keep that discussion going too, so.
It's kind of dropped down the ladder of priority a little bit with all this going on. I mean, we understand,
but
we have a lot going on.
Anyway, so there'll be more information forthcoming on that. I don't know if anybody else has anything on board future items or needs. If not, meeting adjourned.